NFC Championship week buildup. You know the gang had to get back together. We had to make it work for this week. 49ers, Lions, this Sunday, last game of the season prior to the Super Bowl. Your 49ers are going to be fighting for their chance to play in this year's Super Bowl. Cannot wait for this weekend's game, but that means we got a ton to talk about. We're going to play a little bit of game, a little game here. It's called This or That. We're going to talk about Shanahan, some unsung heroes, Lions roar, and the hate surrounding Brock Purdy. We're going to talk about all of that next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. Tuesday night, I got my guy, So Real, Sunil, in the building. What's up, Sunil?
I got to say thank you to Jesse for this sick throwback shirt, 49ers NFL Blitz shirt. Appreciate it, man. Yeah, bro, I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever. I don't remember if we did a show last week. We probably did, but feels like a long time. Appreciate it. And, you know, what a great week to be back to our normally scheduled time.
Yes, sir. Hey, you got the, I see it in the background there, you were watching the 49er Green Bay Packer game for a second time, it seems. Ooh, it's probably a lot better the second time around, right? I know, actually, I watched the quick condensed version last night for the second time, and I got to say, nerves are very different when you know that they're going to win. When you know the outcome, it makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
I tend to be that guy that goes to the back of the book, reads the last chapter, and then starts reading the rest of the book.
Yeah. What? Let me ask you this.
Read. Let's be real.
Be honest. All right. Be honest, and I'll be honest right back. But you got to tell me, at what point, if any, did you lose faith in that game that the 49ers were going to win? Was there a moment?
There wasn't a moment. There was moments that I knew were impactful. And so, like, I knew that if on that last drive that they ended up missing the field goal, if they had allowed them to score a touchdown, I was like, the game is over. I also felt like if they didn't score on the drive that they scored, that the game was over. So I never had lost faith, but I was like, this is our last opportunity. If these things don't happen, it's over. But there was never a moment, Jesse, where I was like, this game is unwinnable.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I was great all the way through, very, very confident. And I got to say that run by Aaron Jones, that one, that kind of broke my confidence there for a minute. I will say that it broke my confidence for a minute. And then obviously we saw how the drive ended. And once they held them to a field goal chance, I figured they'd probably make the field goal. I was like, all right, 49ers are going to be good here. But I was like, man, if they're going to get a touchdown here, this thing's over. Like, there's no way that we're going to stop Aaron Jones from doing his thing, because he's been going crazy all day. But they did. That was the moment. That it was 55 yards, that run. I was like,
yeah,
oh God, dude, it's over. And then you know what really sucked is reality hit that I had booked the NFC Championship however many weeks ago, and the flights and the hotels and all the things. And I was like, I'm really not going to go, am I? Like, this is absolutely freaking terrible. So, yeah,
just
man.
Like Jesse to make it about himself.
Yeah, for sure. Of course. Like, what? I don't care. Listen, very selfish in that moment. Of course, I was going to make it about myself. Golly, man. VK says after the fumble. Okay, hold on. You had another question, VK. I'm trying to find it. Okay, here we go. VK says, Jesse, do you think CMC could play the same slot, and Mitchell and Mason in the backfield with no Debo? Yeah, assuming Debo doesn't go, I think that's a good game plan. I also think Ray McLeod. I mean, why not? He's kind of a poor man's Debo. Let him play that role a little bit. Center the game plan around CMC and some of the other guys. But if you need a little bit of Debo magic, you can always rely, I think, on one Ray McLeod. So that's the way I would go with it. But I think either way, they're going to have a game plan. They're going to be ready to roll. Debo, no Debo, I think they win this game. But for those of you that have been here all season long, we were very inconsistent with this, but we do have a segment called Unsung Heroes. And here's how we get it started. All right, listen. You're not Ryan, but you are Sunil.
Wait a minute.
Well, hold on. No, because you and I had an award show, but I've
Yes.
also done Unsung Heroes. So Unsung Heroes has been around all season long as well, although it hasn't happened just like the award show for like 6 weeks. So
Right.
either way, there were some unsung heroes.
Well, that
in
production
this
costs
game.
pretty high.
Oh,
Production costs are pretty high. So
extremely
I know
high. Listen, it's
the budget for Last Second Sport. I know you see the flashy lights from behind. You know, you
Yeah,
see
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
merch, you see the sponsors and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
still, it still is a one-man show with Jesse, and the budget is still fixed at this moment. So
there's money that had to go into buying that shirt for you, Sunil, that you're wearing. So you gotta let it happen. You gotta let some things happen. But
NFC
there were
Championship
some
game tickets aren't cheap.
yeah, exactly. Unsung heroes, though. I think there was quite a few in this game, man. I really think there were some good ones to choose from. Let's go back and forth until we kind of run out of unsung heroes in this game.
Sure.
You go first.
And I don't want to do it in like order, because I think that if they're an unsung hero, they played a huge role in a certain moment that I think really changed the dynamic of the game. And and I could also say, Jesse, that at certain points in these games, maybe some of these players didn't play well. So they could have been part of the problem at certain points, but then they played a big role that really changed the momentum of the game. And I want to bring up one right off the jump who I think has situated themselves to be a starter moving forward and potentially even re-sign for next year. And to me, that's John Feliciano. I think that some of his blocks in the running game, this is one time where we usually see a lot of the success in the running game going towards the left side on the outside. That wasn't the case in this. The two big rushes that we saw from CMC that ended up touchdowns were down the middle. And especially on that game-winning touchdown run, John Feliciano put together a block that just made it so easy for Christian McCaffrey to score. And I think that more times when I see John Feliciano, he's doing something great, Jesse, than making a mistake. Can't say that necessarily for Spencer Burford. So to me, I think that John Feliciano played a huge game, and we won the game because he was in there.
Yeah, I mean, most certainly. I think playing Feliciano was the right decision, first and foremost. Talked about it leading into that game, and I'm glad that that's the decision that they went with. I think there's two really obvious ones, but I'll try to avoid them for a minute, and I'm going to go with Conley. I mean, you're talking about somebody who's been on the roster, off the roster, on the practice squad, what have you. Man, there were a couple moments in that game where he had to make some plays, and he did. And for a guy that hasn't really been active all season long and around all season long, to make a play on the final drive and make, a play or two earlier in that game, I think that's big. And I think that he fits exactly what the 49ers want to do. I think he's a willing blocker. And I just think that he came up big when they needed him most as well. There's also another wide receiver that I think is an obvious one, but before we get to him, I have to say, very impressed with what Conley was able to do in that game. And I think his moments, although there weren't many of them, they were very, very important and crucial when he did come through. So very happy for him and seeing him come up big when they needed him as well.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, his catch on the game-winning drive was huge, right? Obviously, moving the ball, great throw by Brock, but ultimately, if he's not ready for that route, and it was a timing route, Jesse. Usually, people that don't get as many reps and are just thrown in, kind of, they're not known to those. We can see those when we saw earlier Ray running the wrong route. Another guy that doesn't get a lot of opportunity as a wide receiver in the offense. Chris Conley going out, running the right route with the right timing, obviously played a big role in that. I'm gonna this one might be a little bit of a stretch. I think he obviously gets a lot of praise, but I think there was a segment of time, I think it was in the first half, Jesse, where Diamador Lenore kind of woke up this defense, and where the defense was kind of getting pushed around a little bit. Demo, one of the smallest guys on the defense,
Yeah.
and basically bodied up, and with that tackle of Jordan Love on the sideline, and then not backing down from the offensive linemen that were getting in his face. Come on, man, and double his weight and stuff, trying to punk him, and he was like, "Nah, you're not gonna do that." And then coming back at the next play, and making the play that he made as well. I think stuff like that kind of invigorated the defense and also allowed this 49ers team to kind of realize, hey man, we are that dude. We are the 49ers. People don't push us around. And I think that was huge. Obviously I think there was ups and downs with the defense, but it was nice. I think that got the fans back into the game. It got me watching at home was like, hell yeah, like this is the squad we've been looking for, and I think that probably reverberated throughout the team. So I want to give him his props. Obviously I don't think they threw the ball at him that much, and I don't think he had necessarily a big game stats wise, but that little run I think played a big role for the defense and momentum.
Absolutely. He was one of the two obvious ones for me. I mean, for as small as he is, the way that he hits, I mean, pure thumper. And his versatility all season long really has been he might be the most underrated 49er. He really might be. I mean, he's that good, and his versatility has gone a long way in helping this defense become what it has down the final stretch after that bye week. So shout out to Demo. Definitely deserves it. Balled out. The other obvious one is Jauan Jennings. I mean, listen. Big catch after big catch, big block after big block. I can't say enough good things. And for a guy who hadn't played in about a month, coming off of a concussion, it's like you almost forget how important he is to this team. Jauan Jennings, man, I talk about Conley being a 49er. Jauan Jennings embodies all of the things that the San Francisco 49er players we expect to embody. Talk about blocking. I mean, he's an elite blocker as a wide receiver. Great hands at the catch point in traffic. I know that he has his drops here or there, concentration drops, but when you need a big play, you can count on third and Jauan to make that big play. And going up, climbing up, great throw by Purdy, the layered throw, but climbing up and going and get that pass as well, also a great catch. Jauan Jennings, I mean, probably the unsung hero, really. If we had to choose just one, he's the one. Like he's the one. Fantastic game by Jauan Jennings. And it's unfortunate because I think Jauan Jennings is likely not going to be a 49er next year. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong, but if this is his final run with the team, man, he's really made his mark with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, and I mean, he's probably pricing himself out of what the 49ers could actually, get from it. I don't think he's not going to be a 49er because the 49ers don't want him back. He's not going to be a 49er because they can't afford him, because he's completely outplayed his draft position and has, what team doesn't want a Jauan Jennings on their roster, right? A receiver that can do everything that he does. And what makes it even more impressive, you kind of alluded to it, to not miss it. There's one thing to not play that long after a concussion, come in and play well. There's another thing to come in and then have to play a role that you weren't planning on playing as the number 2 option, right? Like he came in, obviously in that scheme of things, he's usually 4th, 5th, probably 5th option when it comes to offense, third or 4th option when it comes to pass catching, probably 4th behind, a Debo, Ayuk, and Kittle. Debo going out so early, now all of a sudden it intensifies. Like you can't make those mistakes, right? You can't hide in the corner. Like you have to, now they're counting on you. And for him to come up and show zero rust, Jesse, I think is a testament to his preparation his talent, his work ethic, and what we would not be in the NFC Championship game without Juwan Jennings playing that game. I don't think even if Debo was that's probably too much of a stretch, but I'm saying he was extremely important, and I think that absolutely he deserves all the praises and all the flowers.
Yeah, most certainly. Is there anybody else that you want to mention? I'm out of names.
No, I think we were good, but I think there's some people that probably deserves a little bit of praise that might not be getting it. I want to give some praise to Jake Moody. Obviously, he got blocked on a kick, but we've
You
seen.
would.
Well, here's the thing, Jesse. We've seen when he's made mistakes in the past, it's led to more mistakes.
For sure.
Him having the mental fortitude to actually make a very tough 50+ yard field goal, which obviously led to, if that was a miss, we don't win the game either. It's easy to, pick, and this is probably going to be a narrative that we might talk about throughout the show, especially when we get to Brock Purdy. Easy to pick on the mistakes and not, but also give flowers where they deserved as well. And I think that Jake Moody is a question mark for all of us. And yeah, he made the field goal that we needed him to make.
Yeah, I mean that it's weird. It's like he feels more comfortable from distance. Like he doesn't think about it because it's just he puts his whole leg into it and it goes. I mean, that thing was right down the pipe. It makes me wonder, like, why, when it's 45 and under, do you just get the yips? It's extremely strange. He just overthinks it. It clearly is a mental thing because he's got a leg, man, and when he's on, he's on. But dude, still nervous about him. We'll see going forward. We'll see. But that was a big kick. It really was. Brother Bob says, "Oh hell, this Shanahan guy again, Kyle Shanahan." We're gonna talk about Shanahan. I'm curious to see where is going with this one. Gray Fox says, "Sup, fellas? I'm going to the NFC Championship." Me too, Gray Fox. Hope to see you there. I was double nervous during the game because if we lost, I would have had to scramble to cancel everything before the penalty kick. See, it's not just me that was selfish. He was selfish also. So Neil, in what room of your mansion are you in today? It's a good question.
Yeah, I'm in my my living room number 1.
Nice. Keith Murphy says 3rd and Juwan was huge. Yeah, he was huge, man. He was. Wishnowski, Brother Bob says Wishnowski didn't have his punts return. Freaking kicker. I know, man. I know. He's supposed to kick it out of the back of the end zone, right? Brother Bob says to Neil, put the crack pipe down. Moody is not a hero.
Brother Bob's extra ornery today.
He is. He's very ornery. He's very ornery, Brother Bob. Yeah. Very, very ornery. Goodness sakes. You got to love Brother Bob being ornery, though. That makes for a fun show. All right. Well, I'm glad that you brought this one up. And I've talked about it a couple of times. So I'm going to give you the floor on this one because I got to know what your thoughts are on Shanahan. I'll give you a brief explanation of what I said Sunday, and I stand by it. I feel like this team overcame their coach on Sunday. I really do believe that. I think that there were multiple mistakes that could have absolutely led to a loss, should have probably led to a loss. And then hearing him in the post game say that I had a Ron Burgundy moment. I didn't find it very funny because that Ron Burgundy moment in that moment, coming out at half, I thought was ludicrous that could even happen. So either way, that's how I felt about it. I think, again, I do think Shanahan's a hell of a coach, but I really feel that Brock Purdy, this team overcame him a bit on Saturday in that game. What were your thoughts about Shanahan?
Yeah, so I'll start off with saying, obviously, it wasn't the best Shanahan game. But did you get a chance to watch George Kittle on Pat McAfee today?
I only saw the one clip. I really haven't been around a lot of social media. I've been pretty busy.
He revealed something that hasn't been revealed.
Okay.
A lot. And here's the thing, like, I don't know. Like, I don't claim to know what a football game plan consists of. And if there's multiple contingencies, right? I think that one of the things a lot of people criticize, not just Shannon, but just coaches in general, is their ability to adjust, make changes, things of that nature. Also, I think it's very true that this offense well, specifically Purdy, plays different when there's rain. Like it's Brock Purdy wasn't executing. So what was the game plan? I guess the easy thing, Monday morning quarterback, easy thing is like just give Christian McCaffrey the ball more, right? That was it. But I don't know what was going on with Christian McCaffrey. It didn't seem like he was all the way healthy, even though he played great. This is the thing that George Kittle said. The game plan was Debo heavy. He felt like Debo was going to have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's what he said. And he said the reason why we look clunky is when Debo went out, we had to completely change the whole game plan. And so that's where it goes back to, I don't know, like how many game plans they come up with before they go into a game. And if you have this primary game plan and you're like, hey, this is the deficit that we saw, we think we can utilize Debo and that's the advantage that we have. And this is what we're going to lean on. And this is going to be how our offense works. And you got that for 2 weeks. You're focusing on this game plan and you're putting this together. And then that whole week you're implementing it. And then all of a sudden, within the first however many minutes, you have to throw that out. And then on top of that, your quarterback is missing wide open receivers, right? Because he's not adjusting to the rain. To me, I think there's a lot of things that are there that I'm not educated enough on how these things work to just say he's bad at what he's doing, right? I think that maybe he was put in a very tough situation where, hey, not only do I have to adjust our game plan, but my quarterback isn't playing well. The plays that I'm calling right now are winning plays, but he's not executing it that way. How do I make all of this work? On top of that, defense isn't playing as well as we are. Hey, this team is a lot better than maybe, we had thought about, or at least, the fan base was thinking of. So to just say Kyle Shanahan was the issue is, I think, easy if you're not putting into context like what everything else is going on. And I could be wrong. Maybe he should have just handed the ball off and that was the adjustment that should be made. But I'm not confident enough to be like, yo, he didn't know what he was doing. They won in spite of him. I think that there was a lot more going on that we just don't know about. And Kittle saying that, I think that they just kind of keep things tight. I don't think Kyle Shanahan wants to, divulge maybe what the issues were. But yeah, it didn't look great. It didn't look great until, it needed to. And then finally they got it together.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear Kittle say that, but personally, I didn't need to hear Kittle say that. I mean, it was pretty clear to me that was the game plan, that it was going to be a Debo-centric game, especially when you ran the ball with Jennings. Your first play out the half, it was like, okay, that was clearly a Debo play. But, for me, it was just my gripes with Kyle have always been the same. And I gave him a lot of praise this year, Sunil. I gave him a lot of praise on his leadership and his being able to adapt and all these things. But when I think of true leaders, I think of people that can really read the room and understand what's going on. And for Kyle, part of his lack of adjustments, in my opinion, is him not just understanding what's happening in front of him and being able to look at his quarterback and be like, he doesn't have it right now. Like, I got to take the ball out of his hands the best that I can. I got to help him out, get him some easy passes if that's possible. If that's not, then we're going to rely on our defense and our run game or what have you. You just got to be able to make those adjustments. And when you do decide to turn it on right before half, at some point, there's only so much time that was left on that clock. and you have to go for a touchdown. Now, I later heard that he had a great play dialed up, and when the play came out and Purdy took the snap, the throw wasn't there, so Purdy checked down. And at that point, he realized, well, we're just going to have to settle for a field goal here. So you had one play that you were relying on. The one play, the magical play, that if that had gone right, you would have had a touchdown. But once it doesn't, like, all bets are out the window. We're playing for a field goal. I don't understand that. I don't understand the lack of adjustments. I don't understand how you go into a half after not having Debo for the whole half, come back out and run the ball with 4.7 speed Jawan Jennings, has he ever taken a handoff in this offense? Those things kind of blow my mind a little bit. And it's clear that he struggles with adjusting on the fly for whatever reason. And it's hard to trust in him, because when playoffs happen, and this is often what does happen with Shanahan, is when things get tight in these playoff games, you have to make very quick, rapid decisions on the fly. And he seemingly is unable to do it, or has been to this point in many situations. So a bit concerning, but my hope is, Sunil, that game-winning drive with Brock Purdy allows him to be fully immersed in the Brock Purdy experience. Not that he hasn't been all season, but watching him play in the regular season very well is one thing. When he starts missing throws in the rain, and you've had the Jimmy Garoppolo experience, I can understand maybe like, oh God, what do I do here? But now that you've seen Brock Purdy come through in the clutch moment in that game, I hope that gives him the confidence he needs to be free as a play caller and just open it up and do things on the fly as much as he needs to, and able to get it done. So I'm hoping that Brock Purdy kind of calmed down the nerves of Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle's just able to go out there and call great plays, design great plays, and if they don't work, adjust on the fly and do his thing. That's the hope, but we'll see.
And you could flip what you're saying, excuse me, and talk about it. Like, maybe the easy thing would be, hey, just start handing the ball off to Christian McCaffrey, and then maybe your quarterback loses confidence altogether, right? And then when you need him in the fourth quarter, then he doesn't have it. Maybe all of those calls that he was doing, still keeping, hey, I trust you. Here's another pass play. I trust you. Here's another pass play. Maybe if it doesn't go that way, Jesse, we don't have that last drive, because Purdy's all in his head, and the ball's taken out of his hands, and I think there was Dan Orlovsky, I was watching today, was saying there was some moments in the second and third quarter where Brock Purdy was hesitating to make plays that he usually makes, and it seemed like he was in his head. Maybe Kyle Shanahan did know what exactly was going on with his team and with his quarterback, and was like, yo, we need this. We need you to get your confidence up. Here's another play. I have confidence in you. I trust you. And yeah, it didn't look good, and it wasn't the blowout that we wanted and most of us expected. But maybe all of those play calling and not taking the ball out of Purdy's hand gave Purdy that confidence that when he needed it, it was that. And I don't know. Obviously, there's no way to prove that. And obviously, I'm the Kyle Shanahan, so everybody's going to be like, of course you're going to say that. But look, people's confidence works in different ways. And where you're saying he doesn't understand his players, I don't think there's a lot of evidence to point to that. I think there's actually a lot of evidence to point to it the other way. But maybe he knew exactly the plays that he needed to call for Brock Purdy, and that's what led Brock Purdy to have the success he had in the fourth quarter.
Let me rephrase. I'm not saying he doesn't understand like the temperament of his players, but it seems like he's unable to read the room sometimes. If I'll give you an example.
In interviews or what? Yeah.
No. I'm saying as far as game flow and knowing what's happening in front of him. Kyle Shanahan is the head coach of this team. Okay. If I have to watch Kyle Shanahan get panned into one more time when things are going on the field and he's just buried in his play sheet, like, dude, lift your head up and watch what's right in front of you. Please, for the love of God. Like, I don't understand it. When you have something that is working, right? You have Kyle Shanahan is like the king of having corners on the opposing team that aren't worth a damn and like not attacking them over and over and over and just, hey, screw the game plan. We're going best player versus their worst player. Let's get it done. Or riding a hot hand. It's like, dude, sometimes I don't understand. And it's not all the time. Like, he does so many good things. He's such a damn good coach. He is at worst like the 7th best coach in the league. At the worst, at best, you're talking about arguably a top 3 guy. But man, there's something to be said for feeling what's going on in the moment and just going with the flow versus sticking to a script, man. And it was obvious he was sticking to a script. It was obvious that he had a game plan of what he thought was going to work. And regardless of who the pieces are, he was going to shove a square peg into a round hole and make it work. And it almost didn't work. It almost didn't work. And it almost cost him the game. So you may be right.
Well,
maybe what he did with Purdy gave him the confidence in the end. Maybe
it led to
I
a
guess,
win. Look,
but
ultimately, it led
they
to
won.
a win. And
They won
what's
in spite of him.
funny,
I
Jesse,
believe.
is you brought up something that sparked something. The coach of the Lions is the complete opposite of that, right? He
Mhm.
is all feel. Sometimes it doesn't feel like he throws the game
Sure.
plan out the books all the time. He's all feel, and it's led to some losses, right? That going for it on on the 2-point conversion, even though you moved back, like that's a complete feeling. And hey, we're just gonna go with it because I feel like our team has the momentum. I told them we're gonna win this game now, and it led to them losing the actual game and losing the 2 seed, right? Or potentially, or they actually did lose the 2 seed. Obviously, it didn't end up working. So there's give and take with that, Jesse. Like sometimes all of us have these opinions, and we're just like, if it's this way, that would change things. And ultimately, look, Kyle Shanahan is Kyle Shanahan. Like we know who he is, and people don't change super drastically. His belief and his philosophy when it comes to coaching is I don't want to use emotion. I don't want to all of a sudden like make these huge changes. I'm going to stick as close and trust our game tape, our coaching, our all of the things that our preparation going into it, and we're going to stick to this game plan because I believe that this game plan is going to work. You can say, hey, that's not the type of coach that I like. That's not the system that I like playing in, but it's extremely effective. The 49ers are having one of the best streaks that they've had as a organization since the 80s teams that have been winning all the championships, right? So ultimately it's a thing. Maybe you wanted more of a Dan Campbell. I think there's some people that might look at Dan Campbell and be like, dude, you're too much of a gunslinger. You're too much like, we need to reel you in because maybe some of the choices he makes are going to end up to being a major loss. We'll see. The great thing, that's a good story and narrative to go into this NFC championship game, because I don't think Kyle Shanahan is going to do anything outside of what the game plan. And I think Dan Campbell is going to do a lot of things outside of the game plan based off of how he feels. And we get
I
to
think so
see
too.
how it ends up working. But I just think that sometimes we're asking people to change what has caused them to be extremely successful. And that's just, it's just not realistic.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they won, right? And I don't want to be like Debbie Downer over a win. I'm so happy that they won. I'm so happy that I get to attend the NFC Championship. I just, like I said, in that moment, and that's how I felt in the moment. And 2-3 days later, I feel the exact same way. I felt like they overcame Kyle in that game. And like I said, I also believe that maybe that's what propels him and does loosen him up a little bit. It's like, all right, we're good. Like, not only do we have the team, but we do have the quarterback. We're good here. And I'm going to go out and just call the best game plan of my life and be freer and be a little bit looser and just do what it takes to win. I've seen it happen too much. At some point, it's just reality. We can say, oh, well, maybe this or that. Like, if they had lost that game, it would have been bad for Kyle Shanahan. And there would have been, I don't know who else you would have blamed. I mean, are you really going to put it on a second-year quarterback? I don't know that I couldn't do that. Like Kyle was this close to blowing it again, to blowing it again, and it would have fallen squarely on his shoulders.
That's a lot.
Yet again,
you can say that a lot. They've been Mahomes is this close to not winning 2 Super Bowls. You know what I mean? So like everything is a game of inches, right? To take a line from Al Pacino and any given Sunday, like that's what the game is, Jesse. Like we've been watching this game our whole lives. Every single playoff, they're always this close, and it's always a minor thing here and there that like, you know, your guy Josh Allen hasn't won, you know, the big one or gotten to the Super Bowl, and it's always minor things. You always find a way to make it not his fault, but like ultimately it's always a little thing here and there, a missed catch, you know, a missed pass, whatever the case may be. That's what it is. That's the difference between greatness and not, right? It's all these little things, but ultimately they got the win. To me, to say they won in spite of Kyle Shanahan, I think is harsh, because if you listen to all the offensive men, they're like, we trusted that Kyle Shanahan would put us in the right position when it mattered, and he did. So I don't think they're saying, hey, we did this. They're still saying Kyle Shanahan helped us win this game with what he did in the fourth quarter.
5-time Super Bowl champ says, let's face the facts, Jesse. Kyle's job is the safest in the NFL. I'm not calling for his job. We don't have to go to extremes. Nobody here is calling for his job. Nobody here, that's way over the top. What I'm saying is, in that moment, that's the way I felt. 3 days later, I feel the same way. I feel like they won in spite of him. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to perform this week. That doesn't mean that his game plan wasn't fantastic going in that game. If Debo plays, they might blow out Green Bay, and the game plan looks fantastic, and we're going, just another genius game called by Kyle Shanahan, everybody wide open. Like, those things all could be true, and I believe that is a possibility. I believe that it could happen this week. It might even happen in the Super Bowl, and we're going to celebrate getting a 6th Lombardi. You'll be able to change your name to 6-time Super Bowl champs, but in that moment, I felt like they overcame them, and 3 days later, I'm not backing off that. That's the way that I felt. That's exactly how I felt. And I think that Brock Purdy and this team deserves a lot of credit for going out and executing and doing what they needed to do. And there's sometimes you don't have your best stuff. That's everybody involved. That could be coaches, that could be kickers, that could be players, that could be anybody. And I feel like in that moment, Kyle didn't come with his best stuff for whatever the reason. He didn't come with his best stuff. And I think that much was clear. So Brother Bob says, Kyle gets a damn F-. It's football. Injuries happen. You have all these other running backs to use for Debo. Adapt, fool. Heavy pass in the rain. Excuses. Yeah, I don't know about an F-, but I didn't feel great about it. Matt says, Kyle Shanahan basically said the post game that Debo, it was Debo focused. Yeah, and it was obvious. I mean, that was obvious. Clearly, you had to rip up the game plan right away, but I understand struggling a little bit in the first half, especially coming off of some time off and rain and all those other things. The most inexcusable thing was coming out after halftime and running the ball. I don't care. I know that in the grand scheme of things, you look at it and go, okay, not that big of a deal. But I also look at it and say, okay, well, if they score a touchdown before half and get the ball there, instead of starting off behind the sticks and handing the ball off to Jawan Jennings, if they had actually called a real play, maybe they get ahead of the sticks. Maybe they put up 3 points in that scenario. Maybe they drive the ball down. I think there's so many things that could have happened differently if they're not behind the sticks there. And that wasn't helping give that offense any more confidence that was already struggling. I just think things like that are inexcusable. You can't, there's nothing you can say that slides that one under the rug and I'm going to overlook it. There's just nothing.
Yeah, he admitted to the mistake.
Yeah. Flav says, crazy how the game plan around Debo and his injury made Ambry and the D-line suck. Praying that they come out and play like they did after the bye. Yeah, that was, and listen, that's on the players, right? And maybe some of the defensive schematics, we can talk about that as well. But there was a lot of things that didn't go well, for sure. And it wasn't just Kyle. He wasn't the only thing that was wrong with that game. Not the only thing at all. And luckily they pulled it out. But he was a big reason why it was going the way that it was, in my opinion. Brother Bob says, design runs for Purdy and Jennings. Sunil. Yeah, I don't know what that was either. The design, I forgot about the design run for Purdy. I did. Brother Bob says, head you talk as if Kyle Shanahan has won a Super Bowl to be stubborn.
This is the most weakest argument I hear. Like, he hasn't won a Super Bowl, so everything he says is like, so if he won a Super Bowl, it wouldn't have been a bad game. Like, it still would have been questionable play calling and all that kind of stuff if he had a Super Bowl underneath his belt. Like, it is what it is, man. Like, he wins it right now. All of this criticism, then, Brother Bob, if they win it this year, all this criticism means that you're an idiot now. He won a Super Bowl, so all of these things automatically don't matter. It's the same if you won a Super Bowl or didn't win a Super Bowl. Ultimately, to me, I believe he's going to be a Super Bowl winning coach. That's why I treat him as such, and when I do criticize him and whatnot. But just because he hasn't won a Super Bowl means that, like, having a Super Bowl means you're infallible. I just don't see the opposite of this argument. So to me, it doesn't make sense.
Flav says, I thought Bosa played really well, actually. Young is whatever, but I really hope Armstead is okay. And this is literally the reason we got Hargrave. This game probably comes down to how they play this week. Well, and Jonah Jackson's out. They're starting left guard. So this has got to be a game that they step up, right? My brother Bob says, Head, I'm not concerned. I'm concerned you lost your brain when you lost your. All right, brother Bob, come on. Let's chill with the personal stuff. Sammy and Pickle says Ambry plays it. If Ambry plays a better game, I think is what he's saying. It's not close. Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ambry definitely made some major mistakes in that game. Major mistakes in that game. Steve M says, so close to 6. It's making me sick. Play better. All right. It's funny. It's, you know, we come up with topics and we'll text back and forth. And this one here, I put on the docket, didn't even tell you it was going to be here. And I'm calling it this or that. But it's funny how you brought up the Dan Campbell aggressiveness and Kyle Shanahan kind of conservative nature. Because that was the first question on this or that I was going to ask you. Not who do you prefer as a coach? Because I think we both agree Shanahan, right? But what do you prefer from your coach in these big moments? Do you prefer somebody who's loose and winging it and willing to go forward on a 4th and 4 in midfield? Or do you prefer the conservative, hey, let's just punt, let our defense do the thing? What do you like out of your coach? Do you like the loose nature of Campbell, or do you like to, hey, just keep things tight to the vest and we'll figure it out later, the way that Kyle Shanahan runs things? What do you prefer?
I love Dan Campbell. I think he's great for their team. Like,
For sure.
I want what Kyle Shanahan does. I think mitigating risk is key. I think it's led to a lot of success. And I understand that it's not always the sexiest thing. And if it doesn't work, it's easy to criticize, right? But to me, I think that it's the smart play. It's kind of like analytics, right? Like, you just focus on, hey, this is what we think is going to work. And unless something drastically has changed, like, we stick to this, because if the formula is still there, eventually this formula will work. So to me, I'm with Shanahan, just because ultimately, like, maybe I'm also thinking about it because I don't think he has that in him, nor do I think he needs that. Like, I think if he tried to start doing that, it would lead to more problems than if he just stuck with what he knows right now.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because I will say, watching Dan Campbell and not being a Lion fan, I love to watch that style. I love him going forward on the 4th downs. I love the 2-point conversions. Now, there was a point, like the Dallas game, once you got the penalty called against you, I hated going for it. I thought that was dumb. And then you got another penalty that went your way, and then to go for it again, it's like, there's no way you have 3 great 2-point conversion calls dialed up for this game. It's just, I don't believe it. So it's sometimes it can go too far, but man, when you're watching a game and you see the fake punt or you see 4th and 4 or whatever, and they're going for it, I love that as a fan. I prefer to watch that. That being said, for my team,
Exactly.
I'd get a little bit nervous in those moments, man, because it really in those moments, as awesome as it can be and as elated as you can feel when you convert. Ooh, if you don't,
Yeah.
it's
It's
one of those
great when it
moments that
goes
you look
well.
back on. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
great when it goes well. It's fun when it goes well. It's like, the Philly special and all these things. They're great.
yeah,
Like they're moments if
yeah,
they work. If you get
yeah.
stopped like Seattle when they did the Russ versus giving it to Marshawn Lynch, it didn't work. That was more feeling over what like the game plan would be like, just run it, right? 1 yard in, just run it. But the feeling is like, hey, let's pass the ball. They're probably not going to expect it, all that kind of stuff. It didn't work. And now that kind of blew up that team. That one play made it where Sherman and all the Legion of Boom, all that, like it blew up the team. So, like I said, it's easy in the moment to be like, if he would have done this, if he would have done that, but you never know how those things actually play out.
Well, Joseph pushes back and says Ben Johnson said he had 22 2-point conversion plays in his folder. So, how many did he have from the 7-yard line? How many
That's a good
2-point conversion plays did he have dialed up from the 7? I'm going to say none is my guess out of those 22. And clearly he had one that he liked better because that's what they went with to start. And by the time they got to play number 3, guess what? They were throwing 2 yards short of the end zone. That was the best play they had, their third best play. So I can't even imagine how awesome 22 would have been because number 3 wasn't great. So I just, at some point, you just got to be willing to say, hey, it didn't work. We got to move on. I love the first one. I loved the first one. Going for the win on the road. Absolutely loved it. But once you get to the 7-yard line after a penalty, I'm sorry, you lost me there. You lost me there. So there is times to kind of rein it back in my opinion. Okay. All right, I got another one for you. So again, not Purdy versus Goff because I think we're gonna agree Purdy. Okay, but would you prefer in these moments unnamed quarterback? Would you prefer that your quarterback has years of experience going through it, whether successful or unsuccessful, like Jared Goff, or kind of that youthful bliss of not necessarily knowing how big the moment is and just being able to be ballsy and gut through it a little bit. It's just interesting because really, I look at Goff almost the way that we just laid out Shanahan, and I look at Purdy and his youthfulness and his vibrance as kind of Dan Campbell, like playing it
Right.
loose, gunslinger type, not a lot to worry about. Who cares? It's year 2. I didn't have much to go through. What would you prefer in this moment? Do you prefer that youthfulness, or do you prefer that kind of years of experience going into this moment?
Yeah, and once again, I think this is going to be specific to the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if this was an extremely young team that didn't have a lot of experience and didn't have a lot of leadership and the talent that they have and the heartbreaks that they've had, so on and so forth, I would probably, if it was more like the Detroit Lions, right? I would want, if I was the Detroit Lions, I would want that experience and
Yeah.
that level heady, like, hey, this is what to expect. This is how it goes, blah, 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 blah. For this team, I want the upside. I want the gunslinger. I want the person that isn't jaded. I want the person that might be too naive to know, hey, you're not supposed to make this pass, right? Because the ceiling could be so much higher when you're not overthinking things, right? So to me, that I want that paired with what the surrounding pieces are. To me, I'd want that youthful kind of, hey, I don't like, we win. Like there's like, I'm just going to make the throw because I trust that it's going to happen. I haven't seen anything else for me to like hesitate.
Yeah. Man. This one's tough too because, like I said, if it's just player for player, like give me Purdy, like obviously. But this one category, it's just the comfortability, I guess, of knowing that you've got a guy that has been there and made it to a Super Bowl and won in these moments. You not that the other player can't do it, right, or won't do it, but just knowing that you have a player that has done it, I feel very comfortable with that. So I think people are learning a lot about me, right? Like as much as I enjoy watching gunslingers and big time arms and all these other things, in nature, I'm kind of conservative when it comes to
Yeah.
like how I want
You're
my team to
fake.
be. You know,
You're
yeah, fake.
fake.
There we go.
You got me out here on a limb talking about, hey, I'm the Stan, I'm this, I'm that. Chat's going at my throat, and over here, deep down inside,
I like
Jesse's
the
really
safety,
everything.
man. I'm going safety. I'm taking the safety. So
But you want to
I prefer
complain when it doesn't work.
I prefer the experience. So I'm gonna go there. Now I'm gonna ask you a straight up one and then we'll be done.
All right.
This is just straight up. Brandon Ayuk or Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Ooh. That's a brutal one, man, because Alman is that dude.
I know.
That's a good
This is such
one,
a tough
bro.
question, bro.
That's a good one. But once again, I'm doing it in the perspective of the 49ers, right? Doing it of the perspective of the 49ers. And the blocking of the blocking of Brandon Ayuk and what he needs to be in this, like route running, hands, speed, all those types of things. I you could edge it either way, right? I don't think Amon St. Brown is the number one option on their team. He gets way more opportunities than Brandon Ayuk does, and I've already on previous shows talked about if Brandon Ayuk got more opportunity, his numbers would be he'd be the number one receiver in the league in my opinion. If he got the same amount of targets as the number one receivers are, he would be that. So I'm taking Brandon Ayuk because I do think that if he was placed in the Lions offense and given all the targets that St. Brown does, he would be that, plus he has that physicality that I think St. Brown doesn't have, that I like in my receivers.
And St. Brown to me is like if Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel had a love child, it would be Amon-Ra St. Brown. Because
St. Brown is so good though.
He's smaller in stature, but he's very physical. He can run the ball. You can give him sweeps and what have you. He'll run the ball. He'll run you over, but then he'll also route you up. And then he's got strong hands at the catch point. Like there really is not. I mean, he is such a damn good player. 49er fans, enjoy watching him play. You really should.
He's gonna have a terrible game.
Hold up,
time out.
He needs
to have a terrible game. Stop.
No. Listen, the 49ers are going to win. The 49ers are going to win. I'm just big on appreciating football and appreciating players around the league that aren't necessarily 49ers. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a hell of a player, man. And just watch him play in and play out when they're on offense. If you haven't seen a lot of him, that you can't help but to be impressed with this guy. He's fantastic. That being said, give me Brandon Ayuk, man. He's a 49er.
And somebody said, I'm saying St. Brown is less physical than Ayuk. I am saying he's less physical than Ayuk. I'm not saying he's not physical.
Yeah, you're saying more so in blocking and things like that.
The way that Ayuk blocks is different than St. Brown does. Maybe he's not asked to do it as much in the Lions offensive scheme, but that's what I'm talking about as far as physicality. St. Brown, like I said, stat for stat, or like attribute for attribute, it's a coin flip for me. I think that there's going to be stuff that St. Brown does better. There's going to be stuff that Ayuk does better. But for me, for this offense, I would love either of them, but I'm going with Ayuk because Ayuk is one of my favorite players on the team. So.
Yeah, for sure. I love Brandon Ayuk, man. I really do. Brother Bob says, let me break it down for you. Kyle can be stubborn and stick to his script if he actually won a Super Bowl, because then it proves his stubbornness equals championships.
First of all, I don't know what this nickname Head came from. Like, is that new or whatever?
I think he's saying, because a few super chats ago he said that clearly you're thinking with your head and not your brain. Like you're just going with your like what you prefer, not actually breaking it down when it comes to Kyle Shanahan. I think is where he's going with it.
So it's funny because the same stubbornness that Brother Bob thinks he's right with is the same thing that he's accusing Kyle Shanahan of. It doesn't. So, like, once again, I said, Kyle Shanahan does it. He wins the Super Bowl this year. What are you going to do, Brother Bob? Are you going to come back to this show and humble yourself to be like, I was wrong, and my analysis and all the times I was coming at your head was wrong? Are you going to do that? Probably not, but, to each their own.
We'll see. Kalikai. I'm going to screw this up every time until you give me the right pronunciation. Either way, true to my word, not as worried. George came out and saw or gave us the game plan was Debo, 3 TDs, 300 yards. Makes sense why we were so flat. Run CMC. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that, man. We did. Jesus says 33-21. Bookmark this right now. 49ers on top. Let's go. I think I had it 31-23, so we're similar. Something like that, or 30-23. I can't quite remember. Brother Bob says, I used to like you, Head, but no more barbecue invite, bro.
Brother Bob, what I'm realizing is you are toxic, and you are the type of person that I need to stay away from. So I used to want to be invited to your barbecues, and I used to fiend for your approval. But what I'm realizing is, maybe you just not it, bro. Maybe you too toxic for me, my guy.
He said he'll say he's wrong. He's saying Head is in Mr. Clean because you got a bald head. That's where he's coming from.
That makes sense. I'd rather be called Mr. Clean than Head, though. That's kind of a pause moment. But hey, I'll hold you to that, Brother Bob. I'll hold you to that.
49er Vito, member for 3 months. Appreciate you. Says my prediction: 49ers 31, Lions 20. I like it. Okay. Kaliki says, sorry for the gibberish. I've had 102 fever for the week. Hope you feel better. I really do. That sucks. Fevers are like the worst too. I wish Brock. Yeah. I wish they're the worst, dude. They're the worst. I wish Brock would host focus on winning the damn Super Bowl. He hasn't had an off season. This off season, he can focus on competing with some of the elite quarterbacks. All right, that's fair. I think his focus is on the Super Bowl, man. I think everybody else is kind of talking for him when it comes to like, is he elite? Is he not elite? We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I think his focus is in the right place. And he says, win the damn ring and silence the critics. Yeah, I agree. Mike says, JJ, the Gatorade table player of the week.
Was fire.
That was so sick, man. I loved that. Absolutely loved it, man. Andrew says, introspective of how this season pans out. Which important players do you think won't be back next year? Oh, irrespective.
You just said JJ.
Yeah, I don't think Juwan Jennings will be back. I think this team's going to stay pretty close intact, really.
Under contract, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could see him losing Feliciano. Just some 1-year guys, but
in 2 years, I think is going to be some.
It's going to be a mass exodus. Yeah. I mean,
this offseason, not so much.
2 years, you're looking at guys like CMC, Kittle, Trent Williams, Eric Armstead, Hargrave. I think there's a chance Juszczyk, all of them are gone. So or retired. Yeah. One gone in one way or another. This team is going to be gutted in 2 years. And that'll be fine. I mean, it'll be time to kind of retool, and if Brock Purdy is who people think he is, then they'll continue to win and retool and make the playoffs and then kind of do what the Rams did this year. Like, hey, you go to the first round, maybe you lose, and then boom, you're right back in things after a draft and $40 million in cap space. So that's what the hope is. Brother Bob says, I am thinking of going to the Super Bowl again. So Kyle Shanahan better. Ooh, you said again. That was a subtle flex there. You said again. as if you've been there before. All right. I see you, Brother Bob. Kaliki says, since you asked, Kaleki. You could have done it without a super chat. I would have found it. I asked you. I don't want you to have to pay to tell me how to say your name right. And I appreciate you telling me. I'm just letting you know right now, I'm so awful with names. I'm going to screw it up again. So forgive me, Kaleki. Forgive me. Elite Archer, title of the show is ironic considering you helped create the narrative around Bach. Trying to walk back your BS already, Jess? Well, we'll talk about it here in a moment. But Elite, I think everything that I've said is a little bit misunderstood. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it in a moment. And you, listen, if I'm deemed a hater, then I'm deemed a hater. There's probably not much that I'm going to say that's going to walk it back. But what I've said, I stand by. I'm not walking it back. And we'll talk about it when we get to that segment. So stay tuned. All right, let's talk about the Lions a little bit because that is the matchup that is at hand here. What problems do the Lions present for the San Francisco 49ers, in your opinion?
Well, they have an elite receiver in St. Brown who can play from the slot and do a lot of things that receivers or the 49ers have had trouble guarding in receivers like Cooper Kupp and, Puka and all these guys that have like the speedy kind of underneath routes. He could do that, but he also can just straight run past you as well. He has that kind of speed and ability. So they have that. They have a really solid two-headed monster in the backfield in Montgomery and Gibbs. So that obviously we just saw Aaron Jones have, a big game against the 49ers. So they have two guys that could make those type of plays. They have probably the best offensive line that the 49ers, I guess the Eagles maybe have a better offensive line, but up there, one of the top probably 5 offensive lines. So obviously that is a problem when our defensive line does need to get to the quarterback to make Goff. We know Goff doesn't do well under pressure. And then they have a guy on defense in Aiden Hutchinson who is probably going to get matched up against our biggest weakness on the offensive line, which is Colin McKivitz, right? Yeah. So there's some matchups there that I think the Lions could definitely take advantage of if the 49ers aren't buttoned up. And, those players like a McKivitz, like Ambry Thomas, or even Demo, who might be lined up against St. Brown or Mooney, whomever it is that lines up against them, can take advantage of. And it's going to be important for that interior defensive line, as well as the linebackers, to be able to track those running backs because, Gibbs can do the outside running very well. Montgomery is a beast going between the tackles. So there's a lot of things that if the 49ers don't come out buttoned up, they could take advantage of. Now, I've just mentioned all of those things. I don't think that necessarily they have more talent than the 49ers or the 49ers don't have solutions for all of that. I'm just saying that if they aren't buttoned up, those are the things that the Lions can take advantage of.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the other thing that we've talked about a couple times throughout the show is their recklessness to a certain extent. And if it does work, how hard that can be. It's hard to stop offenses, good offenses, especially for 4 straight plays. It is. And when you have a team different than Philadelphia, right? Like Philadelphia had the tush push thing and it was almost like a guarantee, until it wasn't, because that whole team just fell apart. But ultimately, you have a little bit of an advantage when you're willing to go for it on these 4th downs and play a little bit loose and a little bit reckless. And if those things go well for them, it can be a major problem. It really can, because you're looking at most teams and going, all right, so good. We're holding them to a field goal attempt here. And it's like, oh, here comes the offense. And now your heart heartbeats going again, and you're going, oh gosh, please don't convert this. Please don't convert this. Because now it might turn into 7, and that can be an unnerving thing for sure. So, it may not go well for them, but it is definitely one of those things that makes them interesting, to say the least. And if it is going well for them, I think that can present problems for sure, because it is hard to hold down teams for 4 straight plays. It just is.
Sure. Sure. Especially, when you do weird stuff that you're not prepared for, right? You never know, right? At that point, everybody's winging it, but it's going to be important for the 49ers to keep their defensive discipline, right? They have to maintain their lanes and all that kind of stuff, because we've seen, unfortunately, we saw last game how if they don't do that, they could be taken advantage of.
Calvin says, why sign Ertz if Laporta's not banged up? It's not Laporta. Their backup tight end, I think, broke his forearm. So they need a backup. So that's why Ertz is there. I saw somebody ask about Ragnow. Ragnow did get banged up in that game. I think he's expected to play. But Jonah Jackson, their left guard, is not expected to play. He tore his meniscus. He would play if they make it to a Super Bowl. It was a very minor surgery. If this game was in 2 weeks, he would play, but likely not going to play this week. So that's a big advantage for the 49ers. I mean, Jonah Jackson's they have 4 very good offensive linemen. They're going to be down 1. That is something that the 49ers have to take advantage of. They have to. 49er Vito says, I don't know if Jesse's going to the game this weekend. I am, brother. Or anyone that goes, can I send you money for a game pin at the team store? My Twitter is the same. DM me on Twitter, brother. DM me on Twitter. Tell me exactly what it is you're looking for, and I'll see if I can get it done for you. And if I can't, I'll send you your money back, okay? Brother Bob says, yeah, I went to Super Bowl 54, sent videos and pics to your ex, so Twitter. J.A. was there. Nice. That's hella cool. And then he says, Head, Moody is a better kickoff back of the end zone.
I agree with that.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that Moody, I tweeted this. Moody's leg strength, I think, has been greatly over promoted, because I thought that everything should be a touchback, but clearly that's not the case, and he needs to figure that out quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, let's get to this last topic here. And the show's already gone way longer than I expected, and this topic might go for a while. So let's dive into it, man. The Purdy hate. Why don't you tell me what you're seeing, and I'll kind of play off of that. But you wanted to talk about some of the hate from the national media. Obviously, there's at least one person, one gentleman in the chat that wants to know if I still hate Brock Purdy with everything that I have. So I'll talk about that a little bit as well, but go ahead and talk about some of the things that you're seeing from the national media.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously the national media has, there's 4 teams left. So every team is going to be nitpicked, and that's the par for the course. But the amount of, and there's hate, there's criticism, and then there's hate and disrespect. And I think the amount of stuff that leans more into hate and disrespect that I'm seeing for a guy like Purdy, who's in his 2nd year as a starter, has had 2 opportunities in the playoffs, and taken the team back-to-back years in NFC championship games, has not lost a playoff game, Jesse, that he's been healthy, that he hasn't lost his elbow in, right? He's 3-0 in games that he's been able to play, start, and finish healthy. And to me, it's just ironic, or it's just weird that last year he was kind of the darling, and it was the underdog story, and oh my God, the 7th round draft pick in his rookie season is able to take his team and have all of these great stats, and the team is kind of doing so well under him. And then he comes back this season in his 2nd year, first year as a full-time starter, and I think elevated his game. He was in the MVP conversation all the way until that Baltimore game. got this team to even better than they were last season and the number 1 seed. Went in, and even though he had a difficult game, answered some questions that the national media has been putting out there. Can he lead a game-winning drive when it mattered, and all these types of things? And it's still, let me take every opportunity to talk about what he isn't, and keep talking about who he isn't, and how he's the 8th ranked quarterback, and now how he's the worst quarterback. And Ryan Clark is the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life is try to put Brock Purdy in the same category as, Allen and Mahomes and Lamar and all this thing. It's just like, I've never seen it, man. And it's wild to me that it's just taken a life of its own. So I was just wondering why you feel like it, and I have some thoughts as far as why I think it is as well.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think that there is. I want to go back to something early that you said, and I want you to clarify for me what your definition is, and then we can go off that and kind of move forward. But you talked about the difference between hate and criticism. Because to me, I think this is where fans get very, very territorial and confused. I think they take hate or criticism and they bundle it all up, and it's all just hate. Or they don't listen to a full take from somebody. They just say, "Oh, they said this, so they hate them." And it's like, well, there were so many things that they said after that. If you would just listen, like take the whole take for what it is, and then come up with an opinion. And I think that there's a fine line. So you give me your fine line between criticism and hate.
I think hate is when you're making absolute statements without evidence necessarily to prove it, right? I think you've been somebody who's been very consistent on, you don't judge a quarterback till year 3, right?
But I do have opinions. I do have opinions,
Sure,
and I'll
you
go
have
into
opinions,
those in a
but
minute.
you give them but you're not putting a quarterback in a box till after that 3rd season, because
For sure.
there's levels. The amount of people that are already saying the 49ers cannot win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. The 49ers weakest link is Brock. All of these like absolutes, like he's the worst quarterback in the playoffs. Like these types of things to me is hate, because it's easy to point to the film, point to the stats to disprove a lot of these takes. However, it's like, hey, you don't know football if you believe that this quarterback is actually good. And that to me is hate, when it's like, dude, that's I think where it is, versus criticism, which is like, hey, he struggles in the rain, or he's he hasn't shown the ability that when he plays bad that he can fix it, or sometimes he makes throws that can lead to interceptions and things. Like criticizing actual play, I think is different from then extrapolating that to be like a character flaw, or this guy can never do this in his 2nd year. Like to me, that's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I forget what her name was, the executive or whatever, the ex-executive for the Raiders.
Yeah, I don't know the name.
I thought that was definitely over the top, right? Like what? Wait a minute. Well, first of all, I was offended that you were calling guys like Goff and Baker Mayfield the elite. Like, let's start there. That offended me. All right. And then to say that they're elite, and then Purdy's like not on their level somehow. That one was like, really? That's okay, I guess. Like that's a bit over the top. So anyways, I think I didn't break down Ryan Clark's comments. I saw like a brief thing. I kind of retweeted it or whatever. Anytime I see like news or whatever, I'll just kind of retweet it, like if it's a big national thing. But he the way I understood that anyways is that, and I think a lot of people feel this way as well. I know I feel it at the local level, but it's interesting to hear because the way that I took Ryan Clark's comments, and I've heard Nick Wright talk about this as well. There's almost a pressure. 49er fans put so much pressure um, on these people to where they feel like, God, it's just not worth it to say anything else because the things that'll come my way, if I have an opinion other than going with the flow here, it's just not worth it. So I'm gonna go with the flow. And yes, he's an MVP, and yes, he's a top 5 quarterback, and yes, 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 yes. And that's the way I took what Ryan Clark said, because the way I understood it is Ryan Clark basically was saying, like, listen, all year long, I've had to like say that this guy's these things, and I didn't believe it in my heart, but I went along with the flow, which is weird in itself. Like, just stand on, especially Ryan Clark. Like, he always stands on his own 2 feet, but it felt like in this moment, for whatever reason, he didn't when it came to his opinion on Brock Purdy. It's like, just stand on it. If you don't believe it, it's okay. Like, you don't have to go with the flow. But then he also, I believe, said that he does think he's a good quarterback. His hate was that he doesn't think he's on the level of Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar. And pretending as if he is was hard for him to do. I guess where I get confused is, how is it hateful to say that Brock Purdy's not on the level of these guys? Like, what is the hate in that comment? Because the way that I see it is, I'm looking at Brock Purdy, who was the last pick in the draft. Okay. Everybody got it wrong on Brock Purdy because he wouldn't have been the last pick in the draft if they didn't. So literally everybody in this chat, every fan across the league, everybody's gotten it wrong. Right? Like, I try to pat myself on the back. I'm like, hey, I had a 3rd round grade on him. I was wrong because I should have had a 1st round grade. Like, my 3rd round grade was better than 7, but it was still wrong. He's a 1st round quarterback the way that he's played, right? So he's exceeded all the expectations, and even the fact that he is in the same stratosphere as these names should be complimentary. It's like, oh my God, like, you're talking about Brock Purdy with these elite names that have been in the league for years and have been getting it done for years. The fact that it's even a conversation, whether a silly one or not. When was the last time you heard anybody say, do you think Kirk Cousins is as good as Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? And no, never. You've never heard those questions. You've never once heard that. And Kirk Cousins, by all measures, has had a hell of a career. Go look at the numbers Kirk Cousins put up. All right. Go look at what he did to the 49ers this year without his top receiver. Kirk Cousins is a very, very good player. He's never been mentioned with those guys.
But you're not. But the argument, and sorry, here's the reason why it gets brought up. Kirk Cousins has had great seasons. Like, he's been played well. He's never been number 1 in as many categories as Brock Purdy has been this season. So the way that when you're looking at all the stats that matter, that people check off as far as what elite level playing and all that kind of stuff, Purdy's number 1 or number 1 or number 2 in all of those categories. So his level of play is playing at an elite status. So ultimately, the easiest lazy thing to do is now extrapolate that to the top tier, which are the quarterbacks that you mentioned. This is why I think it's hate, Jesse, is because, so I want to use NBA analogy right now.
Okay.
Tyrese Halliburton, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's playing for the Indiana Pacers. He's had some ridiculous games this season. He's carrying the Indiana Pacers and having an amazing season. You look at that season and then you go, well, he's not as good as LeBron. It's like, okay, well, we're talking about the level of play that he's having right now. And with Brock Purdy, he's number 1 in all the categories. He's higher than any one of those quarterbacks that you mentioned. Does that mean that long term, and when it's all said and done, he's going to be better than Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? I would say money's probably not. But to not just say, yo, this guy is playing at an elite high level way without needing to be like, but he's not as good as these guys. Like, there's no need for that.
But there is though, because the conversation has gotten to that, Sunil.
There are people that are saying that, hey, he's as elite as these guys. I think in
187, go check my chat earlier today. Just go check my chat earlier today. That's all you got to do.
And if they're in a debate with somebody that's saying, hey, this guy is just as good as Mahomes, that's when you could go, hey, he's not as good as Mahomes. However, when it's just straight, when nobody's saying that, to just bring that up as your criticism of Brock Purdy is he's not as good as these guys. To me, that's hate. You're bringing it up out of anywhere. I understand if somebody's like, he's as good as Mahomes, then it's like, dude, he's not as good as Mahomes. But that's not what's happening in the national media. They're just saying it, that he's I don't understand how anybody could think he's like this, or he's not playing it, it's because of the team around him. He gets no credit for what he's doing because they want to diminish what the results are and what the stats are saying. To me, that's hate.
Again, I don't know who they're answering to. Like, all I can do is go off of what I see. And it was interesting because 49er fans, you guys are a strong crowd, right? And we've seen the 49ers kind of carry some national media conversations. And it's interesting, right? For a team that's not an East Coast team, the 49ers really have a stronghold on things. And I was like, oh, maybe it's just because like I'm in the conversation and I make content for the 49ers. But like genuinely, you've got these national heads who say they feel the heat from 49er fans, yep. Right? So it's a powerful thing. It's a powerful thing. So they could be debating, yeah, maybe not national media saying it, right? But things that they're seeing all day Sunday or all night Sunday after Josh Allen's game, the conversation quickly turned to Purdy's better than Allen. Very, very quickly, all over my timeline. It's bled into the chat here, all those things. So it's like, it goes back to my original conversation that I think you and I actually had. I tweeted it out earlier that day, and you and I had the conversation this offseason. And I had made a funny chart. And the chart was as simple. It was very simple. And it said, if the conversation is before the season started, Purdy is exceeded all expectations. He's better than anybody thought. And I'm excited to see him grow and lead this team and see what he can do. We all agree. End of conversation. Mm-hmm. Done. There's nothing to talk about. We all agree. We can all go on that playing field. But if the conversation is, he's better than this player, he's better than this player, he's better. And I put a bunch of quarterbacks that had been doing it for years that people were, because then it was, he's better than Cousins, he's better than all these things going into the season before he'd even taken a snap this year. But if that's the conversation, like now we have an actual debate on our hands. Let's talk about that. So it depends on where you're starting from. A lot of people go so hard and say things like, oh, he's better than he's top 5. He's top whatever. He's already elite. And then when you push back, they go, well, but he was the last pick in the draft. Why are you pushing back so hard? It's like, no, you don't get it both ways. What conversation are we having? Because if it's he's exceeded expectations, he's the last pick in the draft, we all agree. There's nothing to talk about. But if the conversation then turns to he's top 5, he's elite, you are going to have pushback. You just are. And when he doesn't play well, people are going to point it out because you just got done saying he's that deal. That's natural, man. You're going to get that pushback.
But I don't think the same criticism goes for the people that are already anointed. And I have a different take on why I think all of this
why would it though? But why would it? If you listen, if you've put together 4 or 5 years in this league of elite play and you have a bad game, why would I then look at that and go, all of a sudden he sucks? I'm gonna use Jalen Hurts. Let's get off the Brock Purdy thing for just a second. Then you can go into why you think it's happening. Mm-hmm. Earlier this season, Larry and I were having a conversation about Jalen Hurts, and he called him elite. And I said, I'm not ready to go there with Jalen Hurts. And he's like, really? You question Jalen Hurts? And I said, I've only seen it for a year. Now, it was an MVP caliber year. He was arguably the best quarterback in the Super Bowl over Patrick Mahomes, played phenomenally on the biggest stage. But I'm not willing to go there after a year. Let me see more of Jalen Hurts before I'm fully on the bandwagon. So now that we've seen more of Jalen Hurts and it hasn't looked so good, like me being reserved looks pretty good in this moment around Jalen Hurts. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But a lot of people had already locked him in top 5 quarter. Yeah, look at all the quarterback lists this preseason. Jalen Hurts was above Lamar Jackson. He's above Herbert. He was above them all. That's not enough of a track record for me to say that you having an inconsistent season this year. I can't overlook that. Now, if Patrick Mahomes comes out next year or Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson isn't at their best next year, I'm gonna be like, okay, cool. That was one season. They've had 4 or 5 good ones. Let me see it bad again for a second season before I just say it's over for them.
So here I think is the difference between that and Eric, because I think you're accurate. I think you're right. I think it's too soon to sit here and call Brock Purdy elite because he's had one good season, right? But I think the difference is with Jalen Hurts, I don't think you would sit there and say he doesn't have the opportunity to be elite. I think you still think he has a chance because of the level that you've seen him play last season. You're like, hey, if he strings together a few seasons like that,
for sure,
then he would be elite. I don't think Brock Purdy's given that opportunity. I think everything that he's done where he's having a historic season, right? He's having a historic season as far as there's not too many times a quarterback leads in the categories that he's led in. He's broken a record for the 49ers that have had maybe like we're talking about 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks and Jeff Garcia, who's a dog as well. He's thrown for more yards than them in the same amount of time. But mind you that as well, even though he has an extra game, he broke that record in game 16. In the 16. Game before the extra game, right? But people are saying that they can't win a Super Bowl with him. He's the weakest link. He's not good enough. Like all of these things, which I think that's different than saying, hey, let's hold off before we give the absolute about him. And let me just get this off before you respond. To me, I think that it's inarguable that the NFL gatekeepers don't like change. They like to be able to say this height, this strength, these measurables, this sometimes color, whatever it is, this is what works. And we've seen that, right? When guys like Lamar Jackson came into the league, people thought, he's a running back. There's no way he could play quarterback. We just saw it this season with CJ Stroud and the Wonderlic or whatever that the
S2 cognition.
Whatever that was. And he shouldn't be drafted. He's not smart enough to play the thing. Brock Purdy spits in the face of what the prototypical quarterback is. It's not the same height. He doesn't have the strong arm. He's not, he's athletic, but he's not like Lamar Jackson athletic, Jalen Hurts athletic. Yet he's able to rise to the top of the quarterback statistics in a way that not many people have ever been able to do. And I think, Jesse, because the elites can't figure out why that's happening, they want to blame or they want to give credit to everybody else around him and take away from what he's actually bringing to the position. And that's my argument. I don't think he's as good as Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, all those. I think that he doesn't play the same way and he can't do the things that those quarterbacks do. However, I do think that he plays the position in a very top quality way. And I think if he strings 2, 3, 4 seasons with this level of efficiency, you got to call that elite. And hey, it's not now. You can't do it right now. but the efficiency that he brings is changing the way that you could win in this league. And to me, that is something that I think people are trying to shut the door on because it doesn't fit the narrative and it doesn't fit it's the wow factor and all that kind of stuff that they claimed that it is now.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. I mean, I definitely think that there is certainly some hate for whatever reason. And I've done this a million times. It's annoying that I have to do it again, but I'll do it because somebody threw up a super chat and wants to know if I'm walking back my hate for Brock Purdy. I've never hated on Brock Purdy. Never once hated on Brock Purdy. I said on this channel, first of all, I celebrated the pick. And there's a video of me and Rad, who will be on tomorrow, who was the original other half of this channel, Lions. And he'll tell you, I was texting him 2 years prior to Brock Purdy being drafted. And in that video, I'm celebrating the pick of Brock Purdy. I like Brock Purdy. That being said, the only take I've ever had, and in March of this year, I said, hey, they can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. I believe that because all they really have needed this whole time is slightly better than Jimmy. And Brock, if he didn't get better at all from last year, and he has, was already slightly better than Jimmy, like year one. So if he had never improved, that should be good enough to presumably win a Super Bowl. So I said those things. The only take I've ever had about Brock Purdy that people can't get over, that is the hate, is I don't believe that he'll be a franchise quarterback. Now, everybody has a different definition of franchise quarterback. So if your definition is, hey, Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback, Dak Prescott's a franchise quarterback, some of these other guys, Kyler Murray or whatever, these guys that have been paid, just being able to lead your team for a long time and put up some good stats, if that's your definition, then maybe what I'm saying can come across hateful. My personal definition of franchise quarterback is Hall of Fame caliber. And at any given time in the league, there's about 7 of these guys going. Right now, if you were to go through these guys, you're looking, the list ends around the Matthew Stafford, right? Matthew Stafford's around number 7. Then from there, you've got guys that creep into the top 10 from time to time, but they're not mainstays in the top 10. The Kirk Cousins, the Daks, the Kylers, the Tannehills, hell, Jimmy even did it for a year, technically. We saw last year, Geno Smith did it for a year. Guys are in and out of the back end of the top 10 all the time, but you've got your mainstay 6 or 7 guys every year that are year in and year out. So somehow that turned into me hating Brock. That's the only take I've ever had. Only real strong take on Brock that wasn't like pro Brock Purdy. That's it. And then when he's played and he hasn't played well, I said, hey, it wasn't his best game. Here's where he can improve. And when he's played well, I said, man, he's really playing good football. That's it. Like, that's the take. And somehow that's turned into this big, like, overblown thing that I don't like Brock. And a lot of it is that I did like Trey so much. And I did believe that Trey could be that guy. I never said he was that guy, but I felt with his skill set, he could be that guy. That's ultimately where this stems from. So I don't know. I can't give you the origin story of Ryan Clark and some of these other people and the things they've been told or the things they've been heard. But what I can say is it is annoying being labeled something that you're not when you know that you're not. At some point, I just it is what it is. Like, I can't answer to every critic. But that's kind of my origin story as far as the Brock Purdy hate that I have. That's it. That's as simple as what it is. That's where it comes from. If you believe I'm a hater, then I'm a hater. But if you've actually paid attention and you go back to all the receipts that I've pulled about how I talked about him for 2 years and all, you would know that that's just not true. But to each their own. Yeah,
and I think when it comes to franchise quarterback, to me, that's more of a financial thing than actual like talent thing. Because I think if you do pay a quarterback based off of just the highest, because he's the next guy up and he gets broken off just to make him the highest paid at that position. Yeah, I think if Brock Purdy is the highest paid quarterback, that's going to affect his ability to be successful in the league. Because I do think that he needs a certain level of talent around him to bring out the best in him and he's going to be able to bring out the best in that talent. I would push back on you, Jesse, is if he has the same type of season he had this year for 10 years, I do think that he can make it into the Hall of Fame.
Oh, no. Well, hold on. Whoa. Let me be clear. If he stayed this way for the next 10 years and it didn't improve at all, but was just this guy, which, by the way, there are things that I still think he can improve on and probably will. But if he stayed this way, regardless of what's going on around him, regardless of what he's being paid, he would be he would fit that caliber that I have a franchise quarterback. What I'm saying is I'm asked to give a prediction. Okay. I can't stand up here and not have an opinion. My opinion is he won't reach those heights. I'm not saying he can't. I'm not saying that I won't eventually be wrong on that. And if I am wrong, if we come back in 3 years and he's gotten paid and all these guys that I've talked about have gone and he's still balling and there's, he's still doing his thing and kind of carrying the load a little bit more, bro, I have no problem being wrong at all. But that's the only take. And we're not going to know that for a while. So it's like, you can't then come to me after this year's done and be like, well, what do you think now, Jesse? The same thing that I always thought. Like, my opinion is not going to change until this man gets paid and shows that he can carry without everything around him. And when things aren't as awesome as they are now, that's the only thing. And so we'll know. We'll find out. Like, time will tell. I'm not going anywhere. Listen, I'll be here. I will be here. I'm not afraid to be wrong. I will be here. But that's the only take that I've had. It's not coming from a hateful place. It's coming from, hey, this is my prediction on what I think is going to happen. I don't think he will be that elite Hall of Fame caliber quarterback. That's it. That's the take. Simple.
Well, I think he's going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback this season. And
I think he might be. But that doesn't make you a Hall of Fame or a franchise quarterback. None of those things will. But people think that it does, right?
But
and so they'll be like, you're already wrong.
To have a chance. Okay. He said to have a chance. And I think that
For
some
sure.
may be a little bit sensitive because it seems like so many people are coming out saying there's no chance. And I think that's where it borders on the line of hate, because it's like, dude, a quarterback that has put up the season that he's put up, to say that there's no chance, to me, I think that is hate. Because it's like, yeah, there's a chance. Maybe it's like, hey, there's certain things that maybe he needs for that to escalate. And I want to see what he's able to do. Kind of like what you're saying. I don't think that's as much hate, but you're also saying that, hey, there is a chance. I just don't think it's that. But I think there's a lot of people that are just shutting the door and saying there's no chance. And I think that's where people are upset about.
Yeah, Alex, that's exactly what I said. Wait, is there actually confusion around this?
Trent Dilfer isn't a franchise quarterback.
Was Joe Flacco a franchise quarterback? No. He beat the 49ers in a Super Bowl. Is Nick Foles a franchise quarterback? No. Like, come on, guys. Like, that doesn't make you a franchise quarterback. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It doesn't make you.
What if he wins 2?
Well, if he wins, first of all, if he wins 2, he's now immediately put in rarefied air, right? Like, where that is like lightning doesn't strike twice usually in the same place. So
because this team
can be hard, right? Like, how do you deny that?
This team is going to be very similar next year as well. So there is a chance that, if they win it this year, they're going to be the favorites next year because the team's going to pretty much be the same. Yeah. So there could be a chance where it's 2. And
listen, I think by the way, Alex, I mean, it does go on his resume, right? Like, it doesn't go away. It's not like he wins a Super Bowl and that just disappears. Like, that does help kind of aid the resume, right? So if we're in 7 years from now and we're like, okay, like they paid Brock and it's been up and down, but he does have a Super Bowl. Like, these things all play. They do all play, but winning a Super Bowl does not automatically make you a franchise quarterback. No, absolutely not. And people want to know, like, why am I such a stickler on the franchise quarterback thing and being Hall of Fame caliber? Because that's what wins. Since the salary cap era started, we've had 29 Super Bowls. And I want all of you to go look at how these Super Bowls were won. They were won one of 2 ways. Either with the quarterback I'm telling you about, Hall of Fame caliber, who's paid a lot of money, but they're able to overcome being paid a lot of money because they're just that damn good. Or somebody who's very, very, very inexpensive. Those are the options. So Brock Purdy winning it when he's inexpensive falls right in line with the possibility of winning it. You know who doesn't win it? Guys who are made out to be franchise quarterbacks that get paid like the elite guys. Those guys don't ever win it. And the next time that they win it will be the first time that they win it. So I'll tell you right now, if Jared Goff this year won the Super Bowl, he would be one of one. If Brock Purdy wins, he fits the criteria of inexpensive quarterback. If Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes wins, they fit the criteria of Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, right? So again, we're going to basically be at the end of this year, and 30 out of 30 years, one of those two things rings true. And more often than not, it's the Hall of Fame caliber quarterback that wins. In the few instances it hasn't been, it's been the inexpensive quarterback. That's the only options. So when you've got a team like Miami that's like, should we pay Tua? What are you going to find better? I don't know, but you can't pay Tua because guess what? You're guaranteed to not win a Super Bowl. Tua's not going to be Hall of Fame caliber. He certainly doesn't fit into that criteria. So to me, that's why I am a stickler. Unless you know that he's that guy or you think he could be, you cannot extend guys like that because you're basically guaranteeing you're not going to win a Super Bowl as long as they're there. It's a big deal. It's
unless
everything.
You get them at a certain price point.
For sure. What I'm saying is you can't pay them that elite
like
money. You can't do that.
You can't pay them like the top quarterback. And I agree with that. I truly believe you can't pay most of these quarterbacks that. I think Josh Allen is overpaid. I think that he's going to have a tough time winning a Super Bowl because now his salary is going to kick up and people are already saying he doesn't have enough weapons. Well, it's about to get even harder for him to get weapons and he hasn't been able to do it with the thing there. So, it's just tough with the salary cap league, if you are a type of person that needs talent around you. Yeah. So I agree with that. I think Brock Purdy, if he's getting paid $60 million a year, which is probably going to be what the contracts are by the time it's like, yo, that's,
Tua pops into the chat. 187 says Purdy's better than Tua. I agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And then one last one before I get to the Supers. Mickey says, how confident are you that Brock isn't a franchise quarterback? If I wasn't confident, I would be quote unquote walking back my comments as people always ask me that I'm doing. So I'm not walking it back. So pretty confident, but it doesn't mean I'm right. It certainly doesn't mean I'm right. Listen, and let me say this too, and this is one more thing. Another little beef that I have with fans is that okay, a couple weeks ago, the conversation came up between CJ Stroud and Brock Purdy, and who you thought was better. And I said, give me CJ Stroud. Like I'm taking CJ Stroud. Now, a lot of that is I did have CJ Stroud as the best quarterback coming out of this draft. CJ Stroud has obviously done very, very good things this year, as has Brock. But I think long-term CJ Stroud can fit the mold that I'm looking for. Now, he may not. I could be completely wrong, but so far, so good. When I said that, I had multiple people say, you're a hater. How can you say CJ Stroud is better? And I'm not going to call out names because there are multiple people that are in here regularly, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I know who you are. Those same people, by the way, came into the chat after Wild Card Weekend and basically said, wow, I had never really seen CJ Stroud play. He's really good. You're right. He's phenomenal. He's elite. And I'm thinking to myself, 3 weeks ago, when I said that I would take CJ Stroud over Purdy, I was a hater. As if you had watched CJ Stroud play a lot of football and you knew what CJ Stroud was. And 3 weeks later, you're in my same chat telling me this is the first time you've really watched CJ Stroud, but you had strong opinions 3 weeks ago. Come on, guys. Like we gotta be better than that. Like, I don't mind having a difference of opinion, but man, that can't happen. Though that can't happen. I remember everything. I'm like an elephant. I'm not gonna call anybody out, but that was pretty funny. That was actually really funny when I saw that. I'm like, no way. You were here 3 weeks ago calling me a hater for saying that. Anyways, Calvin says, I actually think they scheme Moody to kick it short. He angles the short kicks for some reason, so they are trying to draw a return. Yeah, they do. They definitely do, because when he decides he wants to kick it through the back of the end zone, he does. But that's a bad game plan. Frank Tom Ocean, I saw your chat earlier. Yes, I do. So if you know, just so you know, if you're a member, everything that you say, your name is highlighted green. So I know that you're a member. It's very distinct from the other chats in there. So if you have something as a member and you want to ask the question, you may have to ask it a few times because I can't see everything, but I'll usually try to get to it and prioritize it. Flav says, Ryan Clark's comments about having to talk about Purdy were hilarious. Dude admitted to lying to, thank you, Flav, admitted to lying to his audience for an entire year and expects them to take analysis seriously still. What a clown. That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the way that I took that, is that he felt the pressure to talk one way about a player. And it's like, bro, just, if you don't believe that, like, just say that. It's okay. Who cares? I would much rather have somebody stand on what it is than be a coward about it and not talk about it if that's how you truly feel. All day, every day, Kim says, I personally feel like Clark when it comes to Brock. What I don't like is why didn't he say this from the jump? This is why I can't stand national media. It's so fake. That's the other thing, is it is definitely drummed up for views, right? We all want views. Obviously, I make my thumbnails and my titles and topics around getting views, but I'm always going to be authentic in what I believe. And I feel like sometimes national media is not that, and that makes it tough. Dazza says, I don't know if it's always hate regarding BP. There's just pushback when people put BP in the same conversation as Mahomes, Montana, etc. I agree. I see both sides because it really is extremes on both sides. There are definitely extremes hating Brock. I see that. And I agree with it. I think that it is hate. But then there is a side where it's like, man, you guys are really trying to rush this thing. It's like, it's not how it works. And by the way, guys who are elite or considered elite get a lot of hate too. It's not just a Brock Purdy thing. He's not the only quarterback that gets hate.
Yeah, Josh Allen's getting it right now.
He's getting a ton of hate. There you go. Calvin says they are waiting for him to fail to say, I told you so, because it validated their initial take and his last pick status. To me, Calvin, that may be true. There's nothing that can happen from this point on to validate them thinking he was the last pick in the draft. Literally nothing. If he turned into a pumpkin tomorrow, threw 5 interceptions next week and just lost it and was never good again, he's already exceeded expectations. He's already proven he was better than the last pick in the draft. So I mean, you're going to wait literally for eternity if that's what you're waiting for. Andrew says, to me, hate is when somebody does not offer a reason and logic for their criticism. They often rely on character attacks and mockery. I agree with that. Shit, Flav, I just deleted your super chat. My bad. Oh, man. Let me see if I can find that thing. That's my bad. Is this the one? Or is this, do you have another one in here? Gosh darn it.
I don't think you read this one.
No, but that's the last one. Dang it. Flav, you had a third super chat in there. Neil, will you try to not find it, but when he don't super chat, but just put up what you said in that third super chat, and I'll try to get to it. I apologize. I deleted it. Christopher says, I'm a Niner fan and I'm hardest on my team. On my team's QB. Brock has had an elite year. Time will tell if he's elite. The elite quarterbacks prove it year after year. I agree. And I've said that a lot. He's played at an elite level. And people are like, well, then he's elite. No, that's not true. But he is playing at an elite level. You've got to do it year after year. Brother Bob says, wait, so Purdy isn't better than Mahomes?
Nobody's better than Mahomes.
Nobody's better than Mahomes. Nobody. Brother Bob says, why do we care about media hate? Just win a Super Bowl. We're on
a freaking show that's talking about the 49ers week after week, Brother Bob. Stop asking these like ridiculous questions. Nah, don't be trying to give this man.
No. I'm not going to defend him. No. I'm going to defend fans though.
Show, brother. Come on.
I agree. But I'm going to defend fans a little bit because I do think sometimes people get this complex like, oh, I got to protect him like he's my little brother, Brock Purdy, you know? And you don't have to go that crazy with it, but I do understand it. Like there is an element, and I'm a little bit the same way. You got to remember, I'm a fan too, right? And there is an element, and if you catch me in the right moments arguing with other fan bases, Roy, I mean, all the hate that I have for Brock Purdy all of a sudden is like gone because I am like, dude, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback, and I'm fighting for him. It's like he's my little brother, so I can kind of say what I want to say, but you don't get to because you don't live in the household. So there is some of that to it. Like we can say what we want. We're fans of the team. But you, Eagles fan, don't get to say anything about him. So Christopher says Brady had the same stigma when he came out. Yeah, he did. Daza says BP is very good, not elite. I wouldn't want to pay him $40 million plus a year. To me, elite is somebody who can take over a game. BP is not one of those quarterbacks. He's not, but he might eventually become that. Like we can't just wipe out the possibility that he can't become that. Now, I agree with you. If that's what you're saying, is that he won't be that. That's my opinion too, but he may be. Steve M says he will raise a Super Bowl MVP. Still doubters. That's the way it works, man. There's still going to be doubters. Flav says, I think Kyle Shanahan and myself prefer a guy that is an elite processor, accurate, on time, etc., over a mid processor with amazing raw traits. And I truly believe Brock is a better fit here than all three, but are all but maybe three guys. Yeah, maybe. But that doesn't make him a better quarterback than those guys. Brother Bob says Nails will admit when he's wrong. Right, Bengals? Yeah, I was wrong. I had the Bengals winning the Super Bowl preseason. You're right. Brother Bob says, call them out, Jesse. Who are they? I'm not going to call them out. I don't. Listen, I respect these people, even if they disagree with me and troll me or whatever. They're still here, and they still are here every show, which means whether they believe it or not, they are supporters, and I appreciate it. So I'm not going to call them out on their name. It's not worth it to me. Flav says, disagree on Brock's future as long as Kyle Shanahan is here. A lot of these guys we pay a lot were not first-round picks, and I don't think would be the same in another system. Kyle Shanahan will find new guys after we pay Brock. I agree with that. I just don't know that he'll find 5 All-Pros to replace the All-Pros that are in existence. Cryptic says BP wouldn't get hate being on the Madden cover. No, that is what we don't want. We don't want that. Thing's a curse. We absolutely want no part of the Madden cover. Brother Bob says, head, don't start. I'm seriously asking why Peeps trip.
It's the same reason why you trip off of the stuff you trip off, bro. It's just like sports fans. Like, we don't have any say over any of this stuff, but we just have opinions and we get passionate about it and all this kind of. It's just what we do, man. We over here doing a 2-hour show talking about the 49ers, like our opinions actually have anything to do with anything that's going to go on in the game or whatnot. It's what we do, man. So that I'm not mad. I was just like, what a ridiculous guy. Of course people are going to fight back. The same way that you all arguments about Kyle Shanahan. Why does it matter? Like, Kyle Shanahan is going to be Kyle Shanahan, whether what you feel like is right or what I feel like is right. It's just what we do, man.
Mike, tell me what you said as well. If I missed your super chat, just retype it and at me, and then I'll read it here. Flav, hold on a second. Sorry. Come on. Flav says, Jesse, I said Trask is a clown too. Her reason for Purdy not being as great as the others was because he has better weapons. Nothing about actual play. Tell me you're a moron without telling me. Yeah, that was a really, really, really bad take. And there, listen, the go-to when we don't like an opinion is this person doesn't watch tape. This person doesn't watch the games. I disagree in a lot of cases. I know that some of these people watch a ton more football than most of us actually, because it's what they're paid to do. She clearly did not. To say that Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff are elite and Brock Purdy's not good or whatever she said is like, dude, you can't be serious. Mike said, if Brock's name was Bryce, how would the national convo go? Probably differently. I think people that were on the Bryce bandwagon before the draft would feel pretty good about it. Roadhog says, with Purdy, everyone needed to see more after last year. With Love, after a bad start and strong end, he's a guy. Nobody says Purdy's first full year with no offseason killed everyone in his draft class. No, that's totally fair. And I'm in the same place. I mean, I was asked about Love and Purdy going into last week's game. I'm like, listen, I can't say that Love's better than Purdy. Like, he does have some physical intangibles, I guess, but you got to prove it for more than a year. And who's to say that Brock Purdy wouldn't have done what he did in Green Bay? I mean, he was more developed than Love was, even though Love sat for many years. If Brock Purdy was put on Green Bay to start the year, they probably would have clicked sooner because Purdy was further along in his development. So I get it. I definitely get it. Anyways, we did go 2 hours. I did not expect that. I got to be up in 5 hours. I appreciate you guys a lot, regardless what your opinions are, if they differ from mine or what have you. Thank you so much for always supporting, regardless, and showing love. Thank you to everybody that super chatted. Sunil, thank you for giving me 2 hours, and I will be back tomorrow with a very special Behind Enemy Lines guest. I cannot wait for that. And Brother Bob says, head, rub your head, pause, relax. It'll be okay. Smoke one. All right, y'all. Listen, much love. Peace.